The boy suddenly realized his father might about to die, because this was the fifth adoptive family his father had shown him. The boy looked at the rabbit toy on the table, then he turned his eyes to his father with anticipation. The man immediately understood. Hand him the rabbit. But when the father and son were about to leave, the hostess gave her husband a wink. Ask him to bring the rabbit back. The father's heart suddenly cooled in half. If he don't even want to give up a doll, then how can he expect to give his son a good life? The man's name was John. He was diagnosed with terminal illness 3 months ago, was going to die soon. But his son was only 3 years old. John was afraid to tell him the news. He would teach him to brush his hair as usual, read and learn with him. Every time taking medicine, he would wait until his son was asleep. He knew he was running out of time, but he didn't know how to explain to his son what death meant. In order to leave with peace of mind, he decided to find an adoptive family for his son. The first couple was a young couple from a wealthy family. They were cheerful and sincere. John was happy with this, thinking that his son would grow up here. He would be more successful than himself in the future. However, the host's words make him dispelled of this idea.
Of course we can afford the best education for our son.
It was as if a needle had been stuck in John's heart. He suddenly realized the adoption was just a way to add to his wealthy life. After all, they already had their own children. As for whether his own son would be treated differently, John actually had an answer in his mind. He dared not let his son take this risk, and don't want his son to be unhappy in the future. On the way back, he told his son, these cars carry people to different places. The final destination all end up going far away. Then he asked his son if he had thought of living in a different place, but his son didn't hesitate to say,
I like home.
John was very pleased with his son's answer, but soon he realized he could not give Wheat a complete childhood. Even growing up with him had become an extravagant hope. John then went to the adoption agency to find the next one. The staff suggested that he prepare a time capsule for his son. He could wait until his son adult before open it. But John shook his head.
Why does he have to know he was adopted? We will find him a family that will be his family, his only family. He won't even have to remember how useless his parents were. His mother leaves him and then his father dies. I mean, that'll definitely fuck him up.
John choked up when he finished speaking, but in front of children he still needs to pretend nothing happened. But when he saw other families having a good time, John's heart would be very entangled. Should he tell his son that he was about to die? Until this day, the son found a dead beetle under a tree. Wheat asked his father why the beetle didn't move. John thought for a moment and told him politely, all creatures in this world grow old and die, although their bodies are still there, but their souls have long since disappeared. In fact, John did not know how to explain the definition of death to his son, because he didn't want his son to think he could still be with him every day after he died. On this day, John took his son to meet his second adoptive family. It was an elderly couple. The couple seemed very in love, and also have a cute little rabbit at home. Max seemed to like it too. But the next moment, the man started to complain about the neighbor's dog. The words are all about dislike for the puppy. This action made John feel hesitant a bit. On the way back, he tentatively asked his son, would he like to raise a cute rabbit? But Wheat seems to sense his father's strange. He did not tell his father directly. Instead, he said he would prefer to have a puppy. Apparently, the son's answer had already been answered. That day, Wheat just wanted to drink his father's leftover yogurt. The next time, John was taking it away from him, and he warned Wheat in anger. He warned him not to touch anything he ate, but Wheat didn't understand. His father was actually protecting himself by doing this. As time passed, his condition also gradually worsened. One day he just climbed the stairs to prepare for work. Unexpectedly, the condition suddenly erupted. He hurriedly stopped and clenched his teeth to try to pass. Unexpectedly, this scene was seen by the nearby employer. The employer thinks John is just making excuse to be lazy. Not only did he not recognize his work, he also deliberately found fault with his wages, and even kept mocking at him. John is a lazy, lowly person. The employer's attitude made John very angry, so he bought a box of rotten eggs from the supermarket. Then he smashed all the windows of even his employer's new Ferrari was not spared. After returning, John's condition became increasingly severe. Even wrapping a grape for his son caused him to break out in a cold sweat. John could no longer bear the physical suffering. He could only sit weakly on the bench. The young Wheat seemed to sense something. He got up to get a glass of water. Then he staggered to his father's side. Then he put his little hand on his hand. At such a young age, he already knew how to comfort others. This made his father, John, even more reluctant, but his weakening body was urging him on. A few days later, they arrived at third adoptive home. It was a large family with 6 children. To allay John's fears, the hostess quickly explained, although there were many children in the family, but these children have both biological and adopted. Definitely ensure each child will be treated equally. The most important thing is, Wheat would be the last child they adopted. But John still looked at the other children anxiously. Then one of the boys muttered about a carton of milk. Turning around to find that his shoes had been taken by someone, John was worried about the living conditions. Wheat also looked very uneasy. He looked at the child across the room. Then he reached and retrieved for his toy. After careful consideration, John still rejected this adoptive family. Watching his time is running out, John began to feel a bit anxious. He asked the adoption agency staff if they could help him find Wheat's birth mother. He didn't blame her for abandoning her child. He just hoped she can give Wheat a stable home. This made it difficult for the staff, because Wheat's mother left here after giving birth to him, and didn't even leave a valid address. It was a needle in a haystack to find her. They were not sure if John could wait, and they can't make guarantee whether Wheat's mother would be willing to raise him. The staff's words reminded John. On the day he turned 34, John took his son and to buy his favorite fruit, and they also made a birthday cake together. The son was also very good, picking out 34 red candles. Then he told his dad in a soft voice,
You're old.
I'm old. I'm not that old. But yes, Michael, Daddy's not so young anymore.
John wanted to take this opportunity to tell his son the truth, but when he saw the dumbfounded look in Wheat's eyes, he still held back what was about to say. Then his son suddenly handed him another candle, although he didn't understand whether it was an unintentional move by his son, or if he already knew the definition of death, but his time is still running out. The next day they arrived at fourth adoptive home. This is a single woman who wanted to have a child. She had an unplanned pregnancy when she was young, but the baby was given to him for adoption. Just when she was regretting it, the doctor told her she had lost her ability to have children, and her husband left her. To make up for the mistake she had made, she decided to adopt a child. Although her condition is not as good as the previous 3 families, but looking at the close interaction between her and Wheat, John could feel the woman really wanted a child, and by leaving Wheat with her, he could also leave with peace of mind. But then Wheat suddenly asked the woman,
When will you die?
Jeez. Well, I don't know, Michael. I don't think anyone knows. I hope it's not for ages.
John doesn't know what his son knows. To talk about death, then he had to take his son and hurry away first. But he didn't give up on his idea, because before he died, he had to find a new home for his son. After returning, John collapsed on the sofa. The 3-year-old Wheat was so kind to cover his father with a blanket. When John was woken up by the commotion, he hugged his son for a long time and could not calm down. After autumn, the streets feel a bit chilly again, and John's mental state is getting worse and worse. He had to stop working first. Then he stepped up his pace to his 5th adoptive family. Wheat looked at the rabbit toys on the table, and then he turned to his father, with a look of hope in his eyes. The host immediately understood and handed the rabbit to him. Then, he took John to see the toy house he had prepared, and asked John if the child would like these. John did not expect the man to be so childlike, so he said he could bring his son to see. To his surprise, the man replied,
When he's older, it's all a little delicate.
John's heart dropped when he heard that. When it was time to say goodbye, the hostess even gave her husband a wink to ask for the rabbit back. Several people looked awkward together, although this family have good condition. But if they can't even give up a rabbit, then how can he expect to give his son a good life? On the way back, Max suddenly asked his father what adoption was. He was a bit overwhelmed by his son's question, although he didn't want his son to know the truth in advance. But thinking that he might be gone in a month, he still insisted on explaining to his son, when parents can no longer take care of their children, they will send the child to new parents, so that he can have a better living environment. Although 3-year-old Wheat doesn't understand these things, but he told his father that he didn't want to be adopted, and he don't want to go to a new family either. After saying that, he stepped on the cracked pills on the road by himself. By the time John got his son home, he also tried to step on the white line and walk forward, trying to understand his son's thoughts. Every 2 steps he started to sway from side to side. The worsening condition had caused him to lose his balance ability. When he saw himself on the glass, he suddenly realized that his son must learn to adapt to new things as soon as possible. So he bought him new pajamas that day, and he had to throw away the old one. He wanted to tell his son, even if he didn't like it, he had to try it, because one day his family will leave him. But Wheat unwilling to accept anything, and he even lost sleep that night. He even threw the new toys his father had bought for him. John smiled with satisfaction at the scene. Because his son's rebelliousness, it was better than accepting it. For the rest of the day, John began to prepare his own affairs. He first came to the cemetery to see his future home. Then he cleaned up his car, along with the information of his old clients to the colleagues. Now all that was left was his son, who was his only concern. He brought his son to the amusement park, experienced projects he had never tried before, driving bumper cars together, eating cotton candy together, watching the Wheat look satisfied. At this moment John was finally relieved, but Wheat didn't know this was the last time his father would take him to the park. After returning, John took the advice of the adoption agency. He quietly prepared 15 handwritten letters. Every year after that, his son would receive one on his birthday. Inside were photos of their fun together, a red candle representing hope for his birthday. There was also the only photo of him and his mother, and the tools he used for work were also left to his son, because this is the last love left by a dying father to his son.
One day soon, your daddy will leave his body, but will always be around you, in the air.
Like the balloon in the sky.
Yes. You won't see me, but you can talk to me, and I'll listen. And you won't hear me like you hear me now. You'll hear me inside you.
Inside.
I will always be with you. In the air around you. And in the sunshine that warms you.
The next day Wheat seemed to have premonition of something. He opened his eyes early. Then his father took him on a bus. After walking through the city, they arrived at the home of the solitary woman. Looking at this amiable new mother, Wheat didn't say a word. He just looked up at his father. At the same time, his father smiled at him, and he seemed to understand the sadness of parting. From the side to tell the story, the silent love of a father for his child. Although this kind of love is silent and unspoken, but he will never disappear. In the matter of accepting death and parting, adults do not necessarily do better than children. It may seem like a separation between life and death, but it is experiencing the last growth.